The Apache woman said, "Do what you want." What the cowboy did next, nobody expected. The sun was just beginning to rise over the desert town of Red Willow. Its light painted the dusty streets in shades of gold and orange, and the wind carried the faint smell of sagebrush. Luke, a tall cowboy with broad shoulders and a calm presence, rode into town on his old horse Dusty. He had been traveling for days, moving cattle from one ranch to another, and his boots were dusty, his hat tilted low over his eyes. Even though he was used to long journeys and the quiet of the open plains, he always felt a little thrill when a new town appeared on the horizon, full of people, stories, and the unknown. As Luke rode into the town square, he noticed the market coming alive with activity. Women were setting up stalls with fresh bread, dried herbs, and hand-woven blankets. Children ran between the tables, laughing and shouting. The merchants called out prices, trying to catch the attention of anyone passing by. Luke guided Dusty slowly through the crowd, careful not to bump anyone or scare the animals that were tied nearby. He had been in many towns, but each one had its own rhythm and feel. Red Willow seemed smaller than most, but the energy in the air made it lively. Luke's attention was drawn to a young Apache woman at one of the edge stalls. She was arranging colorful beads in woven baskets with careful hands, her movements precise and deliberate. Her hair, long and dark, shone in the morning sunlight, and her eyes, sharp and aware, followed every movement around her stall. Luke noticed the way she carried herself, calm, strong, and completely in control of her space. There was something magnetic about her presence, and even though he had seen many people in his travels, he felt a sudden pause, a rare curiosity he could not ignore. As Luke slowed Dusty to a walk, the horse's hoof clipped a small basket near the stall, sending it teetering. Luke reacted immediately, stepping forward to steady it before it fell completely. The young woman looked up, her eyes narrowing at first, then widening slightly as she assessed the cowboy. "Careful," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. She reached for the basket, but Luke stepped ahead of her, holding it carefully in his hands. "I'm sorry, miss." "Didn't mean to disturb your stall," Luke said quietly, his voice calm and respectful. The woman's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Do what you want," she said casually, returning to her work. There was no anger in her tone, only a quiet challenge, as if she were testing him to see what he would do next. Luke paused, unsure for a moment. Most people would have taken her words as dismissive, perhaps even rude. But Luke felt a strange pull to understand what she meant. He carefully set the basket back on the table, adjusting it so none of the beads spilled. "I hope that's better," he said. She glanced up, giving him a brief nod, then returned to arranging her goods. Curiosity lingered in Luke's mind as he moved on through the market. He watched her from a distance, noticing the way she interacted with other townspeople. There was a natural confidence in her movements, a respect she commanded without demanding it. Luke realized that this woman, unlike many he had met, was not someone who could be intimidated or swayed by charm or words alone. He found that fascinating. He wandered through the market, stopping to inspect a few pieces of cloth and a couple of saddles. His mind, however, kept drifting back to the young woman. He had always respected strength, in people and animals alike, and there was no denying the strength in her presence. After a few minutes, he found himself walking back toward her stall, Dusty's hooves kicking up small puffs of dust as he approached. The woman looked up as he neared. "You're back," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "I had to make sure everything was still in place," Luke replied lightly. "Don't want to be responsible for any more trouble this morning." She gave him a small, appraising look, then returned to her work. Luke noticed the intricate patterns in her baskets and the careful way she strung the beads together. "You do beautiful work," he said sincerely. The woman paused, finally meeting his eyes. "Do what you want," she repeated, this time with a faint smile. Luke laughed softly, shaking his head. He realized that her words weren't just a test, they were a kind of invitation, a challenge to see if he would act with thought and care rather than just speaking polite words. Luke decided to linger a bit, helping her rearrange some baskets that had shifted. As he worked, he noticed the small details, the way she placed certain items in order of size, the way her fingers moved gracefully over each bead. He asked questions about her work, showing genuine interest. Slowly, she began to answer, first with short responses, then with longer explanations. She spoke of her people, their traditions, and the careful work that went into every item she made. Luke listened attentively, never interrupting, learning not just about the crafts, but about the values and pride they represented. The morning passed, and the market grew busier. Luke continued to stay near the stall, finding reasons to help without imposing. He fetched water for the woman and her small dog, which had been resting quietly under the table. He moved fallen fruit back onto its crate and helped the child retrieve a rolling basket before it could be trampled. Each action was small, but it showed the kind of respect and care that words alone could never convey. By mid-morning, a few townsfolk had begun to notice the interaction between the cowboy and the Apache woman. Some whispered among themselves, curious or suspicious about the unusual friendship forming. Luke, however, paid them no mind. He understood that respect and trust could not be forced. They had to be earned through actions. The woman Maya finally relaxed, allowing herself to smile more openly. She shared small stories about her life, her childhood near the river, and the traditions that guided her family. Luke shared a little about his travels too, but always humbly, never boasting. The conversation was slow and careful, like two dancers finding their rhythm. Both were cautious, aware of the other's pride and independence, yet willing to engage. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Luke realized it was time to continue his journey. But for the first time in many days, he felt a strong connection to a place and a person that wasn't based on duty or work. He tipped his hat to Maya and said, "It was a pleasure helping you today. You have quite a talent here." Maya looked at him steadily, then finally gave a small nod. "Be careful out there," she said. Her words were simple, yet carried weight. They were not a goodbye, but a reminder of the world outside the market, a world that could be both dangerous and full of opportunity. Luke mounted Dusty, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and respect. As he rode out of the market and down the dusty street, he glanced back at Maya. She was arranging her baskets again, but now she looked up and gave him a brief wave. Luke returned the gesture with a tip of his hat, a silent promise that he would not forget this encounter. The town of Red Willow faded behind him, but the memory of the morning remained vivid. Luke thought about the way Maya had challenged him, the strength and pride she carried, and the quiet courage in her words. He realized that this meeting, brief as it had been, had already begun to change the way he saw people in the world. As he rode further, he wondered what might come next. Maya's words, "Do what you want," lingered in his mind. They were more than a challenge. They were an invitation to act with integrity, patience, and respect. Luke felt a quiet determination building inside him. Whatever happened in the future, he knew he would return, not because he sought adventure or romance, but because he respected the person she was and wanted to learn more. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, golden and warm under the rising sun. Luke's mind was alive with possibilities, and for the first time in a long time he felt that a simple encounter in a small town could lead to something meaningful, something unexpected, and perhaps even life-changing. Luke rode back toward Red Willow the next morning, his mind still lingering on Maya and the quiet strength she had shown. He had spent the night thinking about her words, "Do what you want," and he realized they were not just playful, but a kind of test. He had respected her space before, but now he wanted to understand her world, her life, and her people. The sun was warm on his back as Dusty carried him along the dusty road, and for the first time in many months, Luke felt a sense of purpose beyond his cattle work. When he arrived at the edge of the town, he noticed Maya again, at the same stall, arranging baskets and beads with her usual precision. Her movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, and she seemed entirely focused on her work. Luke dismounted carefully, letting Dusty graze nearby, and approached her slowly, hands empty and respectful. She looked up, her eyes sharp and alert, as if measuring him in an instant. "Back again," she replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. She didn't smile, but her tone was lighter than before. "I wanted to understand more about your work," Luke said, And your people. I mean no disrespect. I want to learn." Maya raised an eyebrow, studying him carefully. She had seen many outsiders, most of whom came with curiosity but no patience. Luke was different. There was a calmness about him, a respect that could not be faked. After a moment, she nodded slightly. "Very well," she said, "but you must listen more than you speak." Luke nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He knew this was no ordinary invitation. Learning about Maya's world would require care, attention, and humility. Over the next few days, Luke visited her village on the outskirts of Red Willow. The small Apache community was quiet and close-knit, surrounded by desert and a slow-moving river. Homes were simple, made with care from natural materials, blending into the landscape. Children played near the water, and elders tended gardens with careful hands. Luke felt a mix of awe and respect. He had seen many towns and ranches, but this place had a calm dignity he hadn't experienced before. Maya watched him closely as he stepped into her world. She could tell he was careful, not just in his movements, but in his attitude. He bowed respectfully to the elders, greeted everyone with a gentle nod, and never assumed familiarity. His eyes were curious, but his manner was humble. For the first time, Maya felt that this cowboy might be different. Not just another man from town, but someone willing to earn trust with patience. She began giving him small tasks, subtle tests to see how he would act. One day, she asked him to carry water from the river to the village. Luke took the buckets carefully, balancing them on a pole over his shoulders, mindful not to spill a drop. Maya watched silently, her eyes scanning his every move. He completed the task without complaint, even helping an elderly woman who struggled to carry a basket of food. Another day, she asked him to help the children learn simple weaving techniques. Luke knelt beside them, showing patience and encouraging effort, never rushing or showing frustration when a pattern went wrong. Maya's eyes softened a little as she observed him. He was learning not only the tasks but the values behind them: patience, respect, and care for others. Despite these small successes, Luke still faced challenges. Some townsfolk who had noticed him visiting Maya's village whispered behind his back. "Why is that cowboy spending so much time with her?" they asked. "He doesn't belong there." Luke overheard a few words but ignored them. He understood that trust and respect were more important than gossip, and he focused on earning the respect of Maya and her people. One afternoon, while helping Maya tend to a small herb garden, she stopped and looked at him. "You are not like the others," she said softly. "You listen, and you do, but you also think. That is rare." Luke felt a warmth spread through him at her words. Praise from her was not given lightly, and he knew that he was being acknowledged for more than just effort. He was being recognized for integrity. Their bond grew slowly. Luke shared small stories of his travels, of the plains, of cattle drives, of life under the wide sky, but always humbly, never boasting. Maya, in turn, shared pieces of her life, the challenges her people faced, the lessons of her elders, and the small joys of everyday life. They did not rush into friendship or trust. It developed carefully, like the weaving of a basket, one thread at a time. Then came a test neither of them had expected. A sudden storm hit the desert, fierce winds whipping sand and dust across the village. Children screamed, and elders hurried to secure their homes. Luke immediately sprang into action, helping to reinforce structures and move people to safety. Maya was impressed not just by his courage, but by his instinctive care for others. He worked tirelessly, showing that he was not there for recognition or reward, but because he genuinely cared. When the storm passed, the village had minor damage, but no one was hurt. Maya approached Luke, her expression softening. "You act without thought for yourself," she said. "That is not common. Most men think only of their own safety." Luke shrugged, smiling faintly. "I just do what needs to be done," he said. "Isn't that what we all should do?" Maya nodded. There was a quiet understanding between them now, a mutual respect that had grown through small actions and shared experience. Luke had passed the subtle test she had set, proving himself not by words, but by deeds. She felt a rare sense of trust toward him, something she did not give easily. Over the following days, Luke continued to immerse himself in the village. He learned to prepare simple meals according to tradition, help with repairs around homes, and assist in gathering supplies from the land. Each task taught him not only skills but patience and the importance of community. Maya observed quietly, occasionally offering guidance, and each time Luke listened carefully, absorbing the lessons without pride or complaint. The children, initially shy, began to warm up to Luke. They followed him around, asking questions and laughing when he stumbled or made small mistakes. He treated them with kindness, never raising his voice, and they grew to trust him, often seeking his help with minor tasks or to listen to stories. Maya noticed this, and a faint smile touched her lips. Luke was not just learning from the adults. He was earning the respect of the youngest members of the community as well. One evening, as the sun set over the desert, casting long shadows across the village, Maya and Luke sat near the riverbank. The air was cool, and the water reflected the pink and orange sky. You have changed since the day you came here, Maya said softly. Not in who you are, but in how you see the world. Luke looked at her, a quiet seriousness in his eyes. I have learned much, he said, from you, from your people. I see that strength is not only in actions, but in respect, patience, and understanding. Maya studied him for a long moment, then nodded. You have earned a place here, at least in my eyes, she said. But remember, trust is not given lightly. It must continue to be earned. Luke smiled, a faint blush warming his cheeks. I understand, he said sincerely, and I will continue to do so every day I am here. As night fell, the village settled into quiet calm. Luke reflected on the past days, realizing that he had not only learned about Maya's world, but had begun to understand himself better. He saw that courage was not only about facing danger, but also about patience, respect, and integrity. Maya's tests had been challenging, but they had taught him lessons he would carry for the rest of his life. The next morning, Luke rose early, ready to continue his work in the village. Maya watched him from her doorway, noting the careful way he prepared for the day.
Do what you want, she said again, echoing her earlier words.
But now, the tone was different, less a challenge, more an acknowledgement of trust and potential. Luke looked at her, understanding the meaning now. He nodded, tipping his hat slightly. I will, he replied, quietly, smiling. Dusty pawed the ground ready to follow him, and together they walked toward the tasks of the day, side by side. Over time, Luke's presence became familiar to everyone in the village. He was no longer just a visitor. He was a part of their daily life, not by blood or heritage, but through his consistent actions, his care, and his respect. Maya began to see him not only as a friend but as someone who had proven his character in ways words could never convey. The bond between them grew stronger, built on patience, mutual respect, and shared experience. Each day brought new challenges and lessons, and Luke met them all with quiet determination. Maya's initial skepticism had softened into cautious trust, and she began to see the depth of his heart and the sincerity of his intentions. Luke, for his part, realized that his life had been enriched in ways he had never imagined. The village, the people, and especially Maya had taught him lessons that no cattle drive or town could offer. He understood now that true strength came not only from skill or courage, but from understanding, humility, and consistent respect for others. And so the days continued, with Luke learning, helping, and slowly earning a place in the heart of the Apache community. Maya's words, once a challenge, had become a guiding principle. Do what you want, but with integrity, care, and respect. In this quiet desert village, two lives had begun to intertwine in ways neither could have anticipated, setting the stage for the challenges and choices yet to come. The days in the village had grown warmer, and the desert sun hung high in the sky, turning the sand and rocks into bright gold. Luke had settled into a routine of helping where he could, learning from Maya and quietly earning the respect of the community. Children ran to greet him each morning. Elders nodded as he passed, and Maya watched him closely, always assessing, always thinking. She still spoke little of her deeper feelings, but her eyes betrayed her quiet approval. One morning while Luke and Maya were gathering water from the river, a distant cry echoed across the village. At first it was muffled, carried by the dry wind, but it quickly grew louder, more urgent. Luke straightened immediately, instincts honed from years on the plains kicking in. "Something's wrong," he said, scanning the horizon. Maya's face paled slightly. She had feared this day might come.
"The northern ridge," she said quietly. "There are travelers, or trouble."
"We must check quickly." Without hesitation, Luke followed her. Dusty trotted steadily beside him as they raced across the sandy paths towards the ridge. The village, though calm and close-knit, was not far from the wildlands beyond, and danger could appear without warning. As they reached the ridge, they saw the source of the disturbance. Smoke curled into the sky, and in the distance a small group of bandits had set fire to a portion of the dry grasslands near the village. Their intentions were unclear, but their presence was a threat. Some villagers were already gathering to try and contain the fire, but it was spreading quickly, driven by the desert wind. Luke's eyes narrowed. "We have to act fast," he said. Maya nodded. Together they moved toward the flames, Luke grabbing buckets of water from a nearby stream and Maya directing villagers to safety. Luke worked tirelessly, passing buckets, pulling smoldering branches, and helping carry frightened children out of the smoke. His muscles ached, and the heat burned his skin. But he did not stop. Maya observed him closely. She had seen his strength before, but this was different. This was courage in action, not a demonstration of skill, but a willingness to risk himself for others. Her heart, usually guarded, swelled with respect. Luke's presence calmed the villagers, giving them confidence to act quickly and effectively. As the fire raged, one of the bandits attempted to steal supplies from a nearby shed. Luke spotted him immediately. Without a second thought, he moved to intercept, standing firmly in the bandit's path. The man hesitated, surprised by Luke's calm determination. "Leave this place," Luke said steadily, his voice carrying over the crackling fire. The bandit tried to push forward, but Luke's stance was unyielding. Realizing he was outmatched, the man finally retreated, disappearing into the dust beyond the ridge. Meanwhile, Maya guided a group of children to safety. Her hands were steady, her voice calm, and yet she could not hide the worry etched across her face. She glanced back at Luke as he battled the fire and protected the villagers, and something in her chest shifted. She had trusted him, yes, but seeing him act with such selfless courage deepened that trust beyond what words could express. Hours passed as they worked together. The fire was relentless, but the villagers, inspired by Luke and Maya, refused to give in. Luke's hands were raw, his shirt soaked with sweat, and his lungs burned from the smoke, but he did not stop. Every person he helped, every child he guided to safety, every bucket of water he carried, reinforced the quiet bond forming between him and the community. Finally, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, the fire was contained. Smoke still rose in thin spirals, but the danger had passed. Villagers collapsed in exhaustion, wiping sweat from their brows, while children clung to parents, wide-eyed and scared. Luke and Maya stood together, surveying the aftermath. The village had suffered only minor damage, but the spirit of the community remained strong. Maya approached Luke, her expression unreadable at first. Then she extended a hand, steady and deliberate. "You acted without thought for yourself," she said quietly. "That is rare. Most men would have stayed back or run away." Luke shook his head, brushing dirt and ash from his sleeve.
"I could not leave anyone at risk," he said simply.
"We all look out for each other here. That is what matters."
Her eyes softened.
"You have proven more than words could," she said. "Not just to me, but to everyone here. You have earned our trust." Luke felt a quiet warmth spread through him. Trust had always been earned slowly with Maya, but now it extended beyond her alone. The village had come to see him as a protector, a friend, and someone who truly belonged among them. That evening, as the villagers worked together to repair the small damages caused by the fire, Luke and Maya sat near the riverbank once more. The water reflected the fading sunlight, turning the surface into a pool of fire and gold. Luke dipped his hands into the cool water, washing away soot and sweat. Maya watched quietly, her expression calm but thoughtful. "You did not have to risk yourself," she said after a moment, "but you chose to. That shows who you are, Luke." He looked at her, tired but steady. "I did what anyone should do," he said. "But thank you. That means a lot coming from you." Maya smiled faintly, a rare and precious gesture. "It is more than courage," she said. "It is respect, understanding, and care. That is what matters here. That is what your heart has shown." Luke felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was more than a test of bravery. It was a true measure of character. He realized that courage was not about being strong or fearless alone. It was about stepping forward to help when others could not, about listening, learning, and acting with integrity. In the following days, Luke continued to assist the village. The fire had left small reminders, a scorched patch of grass, a bent fence, but it also left a strengthened community. Villagers now looked to Luke not only as an ally, but as someone who had earned their respect through deeds, not words. Children followed him with wide-eyed curiosity, asking questions about the fire, about the river, about life beyond the village. Luke answered patiently, sharing lessons learned from the plains and from his experiences. Maya, observing quietly, felt her trust in Luke deepen further. She had always been careful, always guarded, but his actions had proven something essential, that he could be relied upon in times of danger, that he valued life and community above all else. She felt a rare sense of admiration, one that was difficult for her to express openly, but impossible to hide completely. One evening, as the desert sky turned a deep purple and stars began to shine, Maya and Luke walked along the edge of the village. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and river water. Luke looked at Maya, sensing a shift in their connection. "I feel like I've learned more here in these days than in months on the plains," he said quietly.
Maya nodded.
"You have seen more than you realize," she replied. "True courage is not just in facing danger. It is in choosing to act, to help, and to respect others, even when no one is watching." Luke smiled faintly, humbled by her words. He realized that Maya's guidance had not been easy lessons. They had been challenges that revealed his character and his capacity for empathy. He felt a quiet pride, not in himself alone, but in what they had accomplished together, in the lives they had protected, and in the trust that had been earned. That night, as the village slept under a canopy of stars, Luke reflected on the events. He understood that his bond with Maya had grown stronger through shared trials and actions. Words had not been enough to build trust, but deeds had spoken volumes. Maya's careful tests, the fire, and the community's needs had all shown him what it truly meant to be part of something bigger than himself. The next morning, Luke rose early, preparing for another day of work. Maya watched him from her doorway, noting the quiet determination in his movements. "Do what you want," she said again, echoing the words she had first spoken, but now the tone carried admiration and a quiet trust. Luke understood the meaning fully now, and he nodded, tipping his hat with a gentle smile. "I will," he said. Dusty pawed the ground, ready for the day's work, and together they walked toward the tasks ahead, side by side. The village thrived around them, strengthened by their efforts, and Luke's presence had become a symbol of courage, respect, and integrity. Through the trials, Luke had proven himself not only to Maya, but to the entire community. He had faced danger with a steady heart, acted without hesitation, and shown that true strength came from care, courage, and respect. The bond between him and Maya had deepened, built on shared experience and unwavering trust. The desert stretched endlessly around them, golden under the rising sun. Luke knew that challenges would come again, but he also knew that he had found something rare and meaningful, a connection rooted in respect, courage, and the quiet understanding of another's heart. Maya had tested him, and he had risen to meet those tests, leaving both of them changed in ways that words alone could never capture. The village had survived, the people were safe, and the bond between Luke and Maya had grown stronger than ever. And as they prepared for the days ahead, both of them felt a quiet certainty that their connection, built on trust and action, would continue to grow, ready to face whatever the future might bring. The desert morning was calm, the air crisp with a faint scent of sage. Luke awoke early, as was his habit, thinking about the days he had spent in the village. His bond with Maya had grown deeper than he had ever expected, built not on words alone, but on shared experiences, trust, and respect. The fire, the small daily tasks, and the countless moments of learning together had shaped something rare, a connection neither of them could ignore. Luke mounted Dusty, heading toward the riverbank where Maya often started her day. The village was slowly coming to life. Children ran to fetch water, elders tended gardens, and a few villagers mended fences or repaired minor damages from the fire. Luke's presence had become familiar and comforting. Everyone knew that when he was there, work would be done, safety would be ensured, and respect would guide every action. Maya was already by the river, her hands tending to the small garden nearby. She looked up as Luke approached, a faint smile touching her lips.
"Good morning," she said, her voice steady but warm. "Good morning," Luke replied, tipping his hat.
He dismounted and walked toward her, letting Dusty graze nearby.
"How are the gardens today?" he asked.
Maya studied him carefully.
"They are fine, thanks to careful attention," she said.
Then she paused, her eyes locking with his. "Luke, there is something I must ask you. You have proven yourself to us all, not just in words, but in action.
But now,
I want to know what you truly intend. Will you continue your life as a cowboy, traveling alone, or will you choose to stay here with us?"
Luke felt a weight in her question.
It was not just a choice of where to stay. It was a choice of life, of loyalty, and of heart. He knew that leaving would be easy in a way. He had always been a wanderer. But staying meant something greater. It meant responsibility, trust, and building a life intertwined with Maya and her people. He took a deep breath.
"I have traveled far," he began slowly, "and I have learned many things. But here,
I have found more than work or shelter.
I have found a community, a place where my actions matter,
where I can help, and where I am needed. I do not want to leave this. I want to stay." Maya's eyes widened slightly, a mixture of surprise and relief passing over her face.
"You mean it?" she asked softly. Luke nodded firmly.
"Yes,
I want to be here with you and the village, not just for a short time, but as long as I am needed.
If you and your people will allow it, I wish to share this life, to help, to learn, and to protect."
Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying him.
She could see the honesty in his eyes, the sincerity in his posture, and the strength in his resolve. Slowly, she nodded. "Then you are welcome," she said. "Not because you are strong or skilled, but because your heart has shown the respect, care, and courage that this village values." Word spread quickly through the village. At first, some villagers were cautious. A cowboy choosing to stay in an Apache village was unusual, and some wondered if he would truly commit. But over the days that followed, Luke's consistent action silenced all doubt. He helped with chores, repaired fences, guided the children, and worked alongside the elders in the fields. Every action reinforced the trust that had already begun to form. The children loved him, following him eagerly as he showed them how to ride, mend tools, or carry out tasks carefully. The elders nodded with approval, seeing that Luke was not there for recognition or personal gain, but out of genuine respect for the village and its traditions. Maya watched all of this quietly, her heart swelling with admiration and gratitude. She had tested him, and he had not only passed but exceeded every expectation. One afternoon, as the sun burned high in the sky, a neighboring town sent word of a small dispute over grazing lands. Luke and a few of the villagers traveled to meet the other ranchers, not with weapons, but with calm words and clear intentions. Luke's experience as a cowboy and his understanding of people helped negotiate a peaceful solution. The other townsfolk were surprised at his fairness and courage, and the village's reputation as a place of respect and integrity grew. Returning to the village, Luke found Maya waiting near the riverbank. She studied him as he dismounted, her expression thoughtful. "You have handled yourself well," she said. "Not just here, but beyond. You are not only a protector of this village, but a bridge between our people and the outside world." Luke smiled softly, feeling the quiet pride of someone who had finally found a purpose greater than himself.
"I only do what is right," he replied, "and I have learned that doing what is right often requires patience, understanding, and courage."
"You taught me that, Maya." For the first time, Maya allowed herself to smile fully. "Then you truly belong here," she said. Her eyes softened, showing a warmth she rarely displayed. "You belong with us not because of your strength alone, but because of your heart." As days turned into weeks, Luke continued to integrate fully into the community. He learned more about the traditions, the stories of the elders, and the skills of everyday life in the village. Maya guided him, correcting mistakes gently, praising efforts quietly, and always testing his sincerity. Luke never faltered. Each day he acted with care, humility, and dedication. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the desert horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold, the village gathered for a simple celebration. Children danced, elders told stories, and the villagers sang songs of gratitude and life. Luke stood beside Maya, feeling a deep sense of belonging. This was no longer a temporary stay. It was a life he had chosen, one that connected him to people, purpose, and place. Maya approached him quietly, handing him a small woven basket she had made. Inside were carefully arranged herbs and beads, a gift, not just of craft, but of trust and acceptance. Luke accepted it humbly. "Thank you," he said quietly. "It means more than I can say." "You have earned it," Maya replied. "Every action, every choice, every moment of courage and respect has led to this. You have become part of our story, and our lives are stronger because of you." Luke looked around at the village, the faces of the children smiling, the elders nodding in approval, and the community thriving. He realized that staying had not been a choice of comfort or ease. It had been a choice of heart, and he had chosen rightly. As night fell, the desert sky filled with stars. Luke and Maya walked together along the river bank. The water reflected the silver light of the moon, and the air was calm and peaceful. "Do you remember the first day we met?" Luke asked, a faint smile on his face. Maya nodded. "You spilled my baskets," she said softly, her lips curling into a small, amused smile. "And you said," Luke paused, grinning, "do what you want." "Yes," Maya replied, her voice carrying warmth and a hint of laughter. "I had no idea then that you would stay, that you would choose to be part of this life. But I see now that it was the right choice. For you, for me, and for the village." Luke took her hand gently. "It was the right choice because of everything I've learned from you and your people. I could never walk away now, not after seeing the strength, courage, and kindness that make this place home." Maya squeezed his hand lightly, a quiet acknowledgement of trust, respect, and the bond that had grown between them. For the first time, she felt completely certain that Luke's presence was not temporary, not a passing curiosity, but a true partnership, built on courage, integrity, and care. In the following weeks, Luke fully embraced his life in the village. He worked alongside everyone, shared meals, taught children, repaired structures, and helped guide the community through both small and larger challenges. Maya continued to observe, sometimes guiding quietly, sometimes offering praise, but always with deep trust. Luke had proven that his actions matched his words, and that trust became the foundation of their growing partnership. The villagers began to rely on Luke not as an outsider, but as a core member of their community. They saw in him a man who understood respect, courage, and care, not only for Maya but for all of them. Luke's choice to stay surprised many in Red Willow and the surrounding towns, but the results were clear. The village thrived, strengthened by his dedication and presence. One quiet evening, as the sun set over the desert, Luke and Maya stood together on a small hill overlooking the village. Dusty grazed nearby, and the air was calm, filled with the scent of sage and earth. Luke looked at the village below, then at Maya, and spoke softly. I never imagined that a simple encounter in the market could lead to all of this, he said. But I have found something more valuable than I could have hoped. Community, purpose, and trust. And you. Maya's eyes softened, and for the first time, she allowed herself a full, open smile. And I have learned that trust, once given carefully, can lead to unexpected and wonderful things, she replied. You chose wisely, Luke. And so did I by letting you stay. Under the vast desert sky with the stars beginning to shine and the village safe and thriving below, Luke realized that this life, simple, purposeful, and filled with trust and respect, was the life he had been searching for all along. He had come as a traveler, a cowboy wandering alone, but he stayed as part of a community, as a protector, a friend, and someone who had truly earned his place. And Maya, standing beside him, felt a quiet certainty. The man who had arrived quietly in her world had become someone indispensable. Together they had faced danger, built trust, and chosen a life rooted in courage, respect, and care, proving that true connections are not made by words alone, but by action and integrity. The desert night settled around them, calm and peaceful, as Luke and Maya walked back toward the village, side by side, ready to face whatever life would bring next, together.